Well, it's Sunday, a little overcast, but still, quite pleasant weather. What do you expect in northern Queensland? Interesting, I was watching a show. I didn't expect to come back on air so quickly. It's a reality show where contestants from America compete with one another to do certain tasks in overseas countries with an ultimate prize of $1 million. I'm surprised it's been made because of all the coronavirus stuff, how that's been locked down. The contestants ended up going to the Caribbean. Now, maybe that's a travel bubble for America, and maybe they've worked out arrangements with certain countries so they can actually pull this series off. But I'm absolutely amazed the producers be able to do it, because I would have thought it would have been a no-go. But ingenuity with people, I guess there's money to be made. Maybe it's a signpost to Hollywood to maybe pull your finger out and start producing some programming again, because there really has been a lack of new programming coming out of there. Although so much of it's politically correct these days, I don't know if it's even worth watching, to be quite frank. It really rubs me up the wrong way when I get preached to when I'm just watching entertainment. And that's how NBA people felt. The National Basketball League in America, they got so jack of the wokeness of the coverage, pushing slogans down people's throats, that I think the ratings dropped off almost 50%, and the head of the place actually had to make radical changes and say, look, we're going to take the politics out of the game. So looks, go woke, go broke is the old saying, and it seems to come to fruition in a lot of cases. But I haven't got time to gasbag today because there's been a lot of news. Some of it good, some of it bad. I'll start with the bad first, and it's to do with New Zealand. And it's not a huge surprise, but the Labor Party apparently won in a landslide. So that's not good news, in my opinion, for New Zealand if you want to have an increased standard of living, because under the previous government, they've had a much stronger economy than under Ardern. She's been a disaster. She's a socialist. It's not a great way to prosperity, but they love the fact that she's locked down the country, and that worries me. That seems like people don't care about their civil liberties. They're so scared now that they're going to die of some virus that's been overhyped by the media, that they will kowtow to any authoritarian government, and that is a real worry for me. But anyway, I'll just get on with the actual headlines and get through this as quickly as I can. So let's step forward together. Wow, brilliant oratory. Jacinda Ardern delivers a rousing speech after landslide victory in New Zealand election and vows to bring Kiwis out of the coronavirus pandemic stronger than ever. PM Jacinda Ardern has won a landslide after New Zealand stopped spread of COVID-19 with only 25 deaths. Opposition leader Judith Collins has conceded defeat, saying, "Boy, we knew it was going to be tough." It remains unclear whether the Labor Party will govern alone or involve the Green Party in a left-wing deal. Voters also cast ballots on the legislation of euthanasia and cannabis use, with results on the 30th of October. With more than 90% of ballots counted, her centre-left Labor Party has won 49% of votes, enough to secure 64 seats in the 120-seat parliament, the country's first majority since 1996. The centre-right National Party had only 27% of the vote and 35 seats, a disastrous result for the main opposition party, which suffered its second worst tally in its 84-year history. Voters have rewarded Mrs. Ardern 40 for a successful handling of the COVID-19 after the country extinguished the disease with only 1,888 cases and 25 deaths recorded. Who wrote this crap? Extinguished it? Well, hold on. Let's just wait and see. They thought they'd extinguished it a few months back, and it reoccurred. So that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. The level of journalism in this country, well, actually, this is from Daily Mail, so I'm quite surprised that they would write this. This is actually UK journalism, and that's crap. I mean, they have not extinguished it. My God, can we get back to some scientific basis here? These viruses are going to linger. Oh boy. As the pandemic began to gather pace across the globe, the PM in March opted for a draconian lockdown and sealed off the country's border to all but returning citizens while shuttering non-essential shops and bars. Coupled with New Zealand's obvious geographical advantage, an island with a sparse population, the virus was not allowed to spread to the same extent it has done so rapidly in other countries. In a unifying victory speech at Auckland Town Hall, Ms Ardern said, "Tonight's result has been strong and it's clear that Labor will lead the government for the next 3 years. We will build back better from the COVID virus." What? We will build back better? This is our opportunity to take on poverty and inequality. Let's step forward together. Yeah, they'll make everybody poor, so there'll be equality. That's the socialist dream, and that's what she'll deliver. As the room full of Labor members whooped and cheered, she added, "New Zealand has shown the Labor Party its greatest support in almost 50 years. Oh my God, what are you thinking in New Zealand? Seriously. We will not take your support for granted, and I can promise you we will be a part of the governments for every New Zealander." All the cliches in the book, God almighty. In a second government, Ms Ardern will be under huge pressure to reduce child poverty and advance her progressive agenda after struggling to make significant reforms during the past 3 years of coalition. So now she's got carte blanche, she's going to absolutely stuff up the country. Terrific. The Greens and Labor are currently in a three-way alliance with Nationalist Party New Zealand First, which is on track to take only 2% of votes and lose all its seats, putting leader and Foreign Minister Winston Peters out of Parliament for the first time in 35 years. Well, bad luck, Winston. You're the arsehole who put bloody Ardern in power, so I've got no sympathy for you, you Machiavellian maggot. Libertarian Party Act, so I don't know what that means. Libertarian Party ACT is due to win about 7% of votes and nine seats in its current seat to become the fourth biggest party and junior opposition party. Well, that's interesting. I didn't even know they had a Libertarian Party there. So I guess that's a little snippet of good news amongst basically a disastrous result for common sense, the economy, and New Zealand's future, in my opinion. Okay, now we're back to Victoria, where the fun and games continue. This is a follow-on from a previous story. It's about that pregnant woman in Ballarat that was basically confronted by Victorian police coming into her home. I mean, this is the police state that Victoria has become. Twist in saga, a pregnant woman who was arrested over anti-lockdown social media post as she secures an unexpected legal victory. Zoe Butler, 28, was arrested after organising an anti-lockdown protest in Ballarat. The young mother was filmed by her partner being arrested in her pyjamas. She was charged with incitement by Victoria Police over her alleged antics. Her lawyer managed to get all but 2 of her bail conditions dropped on Friday. A pregnant woman who was arrested for allegedly organising an anti-lockdown protest in Victoria has been granted new freedoms while on bail. Zoe Lee Butler, 28, was handcuffed in her pyjamas and charged with incitement at her home at Miners Rest, Ballarat, northwest of Melbourne last month. She is accused of creating a Facebook post which encouraged people to break the state's strict COVID-19 lockdown measures. She had a legal victory on Friday after her lawyer had all but 2 of her bail conditions dropped. One of the ease conditions allows Butler to visit the Ballarat CBD, but she is still not allowed to post anything on social media that may incite others to break coronavirus rules. She is also required to notify police within 24 hours if she moves home. Butler will return to the Ballarat Magistrates Court on January the 25th. Her arrest went viral after it was filmed by her partner and posted on social media. The video, which has since made international headlines in US and UK media, shows the confused Butler asking why she's being arrested. "Excuse me, incitement for what? What on earth? I'm in my pyjamas. My 2 kids are here," she said to the officers, clearly confused. "I have an ultrasound in an hour because I'm pregnant." The increasingly distressed mother insisted she wasn't breaking any laws by creating and then promoting the event. "Actually, you are. That's why we're arresting you." Mueller's alleged post linked to to a since-deleted Freedom Day Ballarat event she allegedly created. She offered to delete the post as her boyfriend, James Timmins, tried to mediate while cradling their infant child in his arms. How about she just doesn't do the event? It's not like she's done it. She just made a post, he said. Police were unmoved, telling her, "You're already committed the offence." Beulah was distressed by this point and crying so much she could barely tell officers that she didn't realise she was doing anything wrong in making the online event. Police seized all electronic devices in the house, including those belonging to Mr. Timmins and Beulah's sister. Radio King turned Sky News pundit Alan Jones so enraged by seeing the video of Beulah's arrest that he called on Victoria Premier Andrews to resign. "Thankfully, I'm not the only Australian who thinks this is appalling, disgusting and disgraceful," he wrote in a rant to his Facebook page after Daily Mail Australia published this video. "The only person guilty of incitement is the Premier of Victoria. His outlandish grab for power, his disdain of any accountability is forcing people to behave simply designed to take back their freedom." The Facebook event, which led to her arrest, was organised for September the 5th as part of a National Freedom Day movement against coronavirus restrictions. Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews has been facing increasing pressure over the widespread impact of this stage 4 lockdown measures. After 3 months of draconian restrictions, Melburnians are eagerly awaiting the announcement on Sunday about what will be eased by the government. There are some easings, like now that's from 5 kilometres to 25 kilometres, which is a big deal, and they have opened up certain events and what have you, but I don't think they've done anything for business, of course. Although I think there's actually, the hairdressers are allowed to operate, which is ironic because they just fined this poor couple over some incredible amount, I think it was 10 grand, for opening up in defiance of the laws. And now, at the end of today, they'll be able to trade anyway. So the Andrews government makes me sick. They really do. They're just bullies. Anyway, we're leaving Victoria now and we're going back to Scandinavia, and guess where? Yes, that's right, Sweden. So, unfortunately, it's not a great story, but I'll have to relay it to you I'm going to give you all the details, good and bad, and the herd immunity was working out fairly well, but they've had a recent spike in cases, and that's the bad news. Swedish authorities to bring in local lockdowns as coronavirus cases rise. After country resisted harsh restrictions and relied on social distancing to halt the spread of. After country resisted harsh restrictions and relied on social distancing to halt the spread of the peak of the pandemic. Local lockdowns mark a new approach in Swedish authorities' handling of the COVID. The Scandinavian country kept restaurants open at the start of the pandemic. Coronavirus cases have been gradually increasing since the start of September. A 7-day average of 65 per million people per day was reported on Friday. Swedish authorities want to bring in local lockdowns to stem the rapid spread of coronavirus in the country, experts have revealed. Of course, we're talking about Europe here and things are getting cooler, so I'm not surprised that you would have a spike in coronavirus. I predicted that for Melbourne as well, but of course they had the help of the Labour socialist government to make it even worse. The move marks a new approach in Sweden's handling of the virus after the country kept bars and restaurants open while the rest of the world shut down in March. It's more of a lockdown situation, but a local lockdown. Johan Mojd, I don't know how you spell it, M-O-J-D, Nord, who leads the infectious diseases department in Uppsala, told The Telegraph. It comes as several European nations put into effect new measures and restrictions in an effort to curb the second wave of coronavirus rapidly spreading across the continent. Cases skyrocketing. Coronavirus cases have been gradually increasing since the start of September, dashing Sweden's hopes of immunity. A 7-day average of 65 per million people was reported to the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control on Friday. This is compared to 71, 40 and 25 cases per million in Denmark, Finland and Norway. The new rules expected to come into force on Monday will allow regional health authorities to ask citizens to avoid public places such as shopping centres, museums, libraries, swimming pools, concerts and gyms. Authorities could also ask people to stay away from public transport to avoid visiting elderly or at-risk groups. The rules would be offered as guidelines rather than requirements, with the country continuing to avoid fines. Well, there you go. You can learn from that, Dan Andrews. They've avoided fines and they've avoided a lot of other angst that you've created. Arsehole. Bitchute Brastad, Chief Legal Officer at the agency, said the new measures were something in between regulations and recommendations, and Dr. Noid confirmed further measures would be imposed if contact tracing shows links between infections and certain areas. The Scandinavian country was a talking point during the pandemic for its resistance to imposing a national lockdown like its European neighbours. Much of Europe has introduced measures such as shutting or ordering early closing of bars, but now the surging infection rates are also testing the resolve of governments to keep schools and non-COVID medical care coming. So that's basically a cut-down version of that. It goes even longer, but I didn't go through the whole thing because I didn't want to make this video too protracted, so I've just left it at that. So, look, I think Sweden's done a great job. They may have higher infection rates than some of their Nordic partners, but remember they had greater challenges. They have a migrant enclave where a lot of the original cases spiked. Now that would have basically thrown their stats totally out. The thing about the COVID situation for me is that the press have continually been pushing the medical aspect of it at the expense of all the other implications with, say, suicide, with non-detection of cancers and treatment of cancers. All these other things need to be taken into account to get an overview of what corona has done to people, or more specifically what government's response to corona has done to the community. And in the case of Victoria, they've absolutely stuffed it. And it just shows you from one extreme to the other. The Swedes have at least used their heads rather than their hearts and have thought this through logically, and I think they're taking the right road. But in Australia, we're acting like scared rabbits right throughout the nation. It's rather pathetic. I mean, we used to be a much tougher country than this, but we seem to be weak as piss these days, and I think we're way too cautious. And life is full of risk. It should be managed. It should not be ignored. It should be minimised. But you can't just shut down the country. And that's where my stand comes from. And that's why I admire the way the Swedes have handled things. So thumbs up to you guys. Done a great job. And that's about it for the video. I think I've raved enough. As usual, thumbs up, thumbs down, if you could please. Make comments if you feel so inclined, whether they're positive or negative, doesn't matter. The more the merrier. I can take it, I'm a big boy. And of course, subscribe as well. It is going up slightly. It's up to 613. So there's a slight push northward. So I guess we've got to just take everything we can. So that's basically it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll hopefully be back on Monday to give you another update with another story. And there's plenty of them around. There's no lack of things to talk about, so it's just a matter of if I'm still in one piece. I'm feeling okay at the moment, so fingers crossed. I'll continue the daily updates, which will be good. So see you in 24 hours.